Are you a dealer creating a workplace culture your employees are proud to be part of? Applications are now open for the 2026 Automotive News Best Dealerships to Work For program. This isn't just an award, it's a chance to get real insight into what's working at your dealership and where you can improve. And we've expanded the categories this year, recognizing everything from technician experience and leadership development to AI enablement and employee retention. The registration deadline is April 17th. Find out more and apply at autonews.com.
Finding the right car buyer shouldn't depend on luck. It should be powered by data. Experian Automotive gives dealerships accurate, actionable data insights into their prospects and customers so you can reach the right consumer with the right message at exactly the right moment. Smarter targeting, stronger engagement, more sales. Better marketing starts here. Visit ExperianAutomotive.com for more information.
Welcome to Daily Drive for Friday, March 27th, 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. Today on the show, Hyundai announces a new goal for U.S. production by 2030. General Motors' investments into technician training and recruitment are starting to pay off, and Jaguar Land Rover has halted production at one of its UK plants for up to 2 weeks. Plus, senior retail editor Dan Shine sits down with Jay Goninen of WrenchWay's to talk about the results of the company's Voice of the Technician survey.
We've had several dealerships that have printed it off or presented it to their own technicians and said, okay, what are we missing here? Is this accurate with what you guys think? If not, great. At least it started the conversation.
Let's run through all the news you need to know to keep up in the auto industry. Hyundai aims to build 80% of the vehicles it sells in the U.S. domestically by 2030. CEO Jose Munoz informed shareholders of the goal at the company's annual meeting in South Korea on Thursday. It also aims to assemble those vehicles with about 80% U.S. supply chain content. The automaker built about half of the vehicles it sold in the U.S. in 2025 domestically, according to Auto Forecast Solutions. And the company said about 60% of its parts are sourced from the U.S. today. General Motors dealers employ 23% more technicians than they did in 2021. The automaker's investments into training, retention, and recruitment drove the increase. This is because of the automaker's investments into training, retention, and recruitment for technicians. Technician apprenticeships are also up 18% since 2021. And the amount of technicians with the highest level of training has doubled. This effort is crucial amid the auto industry's technician shortage to help their dealers recruit and retain techs. GM is working with high schools and colleges for recruitment and is working to train veterans and service members. And Jaguar Land Rover is halting production at its Solihull plant in England for up to 2 weeks. The stoppage is due to a parts issue with an unnamed supplier that occurred after a fire at one of the supplier's facilities. The plant produces the Range Rover and Range Rover Sport. The stoppage is expected to end April 8th. It includes a previously scheduled 5-day shutdown for the Easter weekend. And those are today's headlines. You can find more details on all those stories at autonews.com. A wave of electric vehicles are coming off lease and hitting the used vehicle market this year, but many of these EVs will be worth less than expected when they were originally leased. And selling them isn't the same as selling a used gas-powered vehicle. Content creator Riley Hodder sat down with retail reporter Paige Hodder to talk about this wave and what it might mean for the used vehicle market.
Hi, Paige. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't we start with what are some of the unique challenges that you kind of get when you're trying to sell a used EV?
So it's kind of a whole brand new market. It's a very young market. EVs en masse haven't really been around that long. And so this whole aftermarket or second market for them is really new and it's really young and it has a very unique kind of customer that you have to cater to, someone who has access to charging, someone who's interested in an EV, which is not everyone, but also someone who might not be able to afford a new EV, so kind of a less affluent group. There's also all of the challenges that come with selling a new EV. You have to explain a lot of this technology. You have to explain charging habits and battery health, but then you have to adapt them to a used EV. So maybe explaining, this is how the last person drove and charged this battery, and that's what this means for the battery health. And what does that mean for the longevity? It's kind of a whole new language around cars. We're all used to, okay, it has 50,000 miles, that means this. But that doesn't really translate in the same way to an EV. So you kind of have to teach your customer how to talk about a used EV and what to think about this asset as, something they're probably planning to drive for at least a couple years going forward.
So tell me, do dealers have an appetite to move these cars, or is it kind of like, are they kind of being forced into this situation? Like, how do they feel?
I got a mixed bag from the dealers I spoke to. Some dealers in certain areas are already moving these types of cars, like California. There's just like a lot of used Teslas around, so they're pretty used to it. Dealers in other areas where EVs are just overall less common, a little bit less. The sense I got was that there's a lot of these cars coming back to market in the next couple of years. And dealers know that that could be an opportunity. But there's still a lot of unanswered questions. Will people buy these cars? Are people really interested in them? How long are these batteries going to last? Do people think about the battery health or care about that in different ways? And so it's definitely a sense that dealers are interested, but they really want to test the waters. And they know that it'll be a price-sensitive thing. If they can price these cars really low and make them kind of an affordability option in the same way that some EVs were on the tax credits last year, then maybe someone who's been priced out of a lot of other areas of the market might be really interested in one of these cars. But like I said, a lot of unanswered questions, and the dealers that are interested in buying and selling these cars are really taking it slow.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, like dealers aren't the only ones, invested in this. Like, how are they working with the automakers to be able to sell these vehicles?
So if you don't know how leasing works, the auto lenders that lease cars are automakers' captives. So they're, finance companies owned by the automakers that specifically lend to, if you're Ford's captive, you lend to Ford dealers and Ford customers. And that's where leases come from. And, sometimes outside lenders will have a partnership with automakers to be their captive, but it's basically the same process. And, those are the people that actually own the cars. It's kind of like an extended rental when you do a lease. They're saying, we will let you use this car for 3 years for a certain amount of money. And then when that 3 years is up, you can choose to buy the car. Otherwise, it's ours. And then comes the next step, which is that person will bring the car back to the store. That store is called the grounding dealership. So it's, where they bought the car, they have to bring it back there typically. And that dealer will have a couple days to decide, do I want to buy it from the captive and sell it on my used lot? If they don't decide to do that, or maybe they decide to do a couple of them, but not the rest, then the captive still owns those cars and has to do something with them. So they might put them on an online marketplace, or they might try and sell them to other dealers through wholesale auctions.
So we talked a little bit about captives. How is this EV leasing boom kind of affecting them specifically?
Yeah, so it's a whole new kind of asset that they really have in a volume they've never had before. So that's not to say EVs are taking over the used market. They will still represent a small portion. But that volume is going to grow significantly over the next couple of years. And so that's kind of a whole new beast. And on top of that, there's the problem of the value of these cars, which is that for a variety of reasons, these cars depreciated more than the captives thought they would. So when a lender leases a car, they have a whole curve and graph where they predict, this is what we think the car is going to be worth at the end of the lease. And they calculate payments and down payments and all of that based on that number. And then the EVs lost value in the past couple of years. And that's really stabilized. But, the past couple of years, like these cars coming back are worth a chunk less than the captives thought they would be. And so that kind of creates a unique problem where if they try and price them at what they originally thought they would be worth, that's not going to be a competitive price. No one's going to want to buy them, at least with current demand. But if they price them at current demand, then they're taking a hit. That's something they're really going to have to navigate over the next couple of years.
Coming up, we'll hear from Jay Goninen, co-founder and president at WrenchWay. That's next on Daily Drive.
Almovio is taking aim at one of the most fundamental parts of vehicle safety, braking. And the company says its next-generation systems can cut stopping distance by meters.
And at the same time, we also see cost advantages for the final customer. Because of maintenance topics, it's significantly less maintenance or even maintenance-free over lifetime of the entire product.
On this week's episode of the Automotive News Shift podcast, we'll hear from Dennis Fritsch, Vice President of Almovio's Safety and Motion Division. He breaks down how Almovio is improving braking performance, including its push toward brake-by-wire and dry brake technology that eliminates traditional hydraulics. I'm Molly Boygon, Tech and Innovation Reporter at Automotive News. Join me on Shift, available this Sunday wherever you get your podcasts.
Automotive consumer marketing is complex. Customer data is constantly changing. People move, email addresses change, loans end, leases expire, and vehicles are traded in. Without accurate and up-to-date data, you risk spending money targeting the wrong people at the wrong times. This is where Experian Automotive Marketing Solutions can help. Our solutions help dealer marketers find, reach, and retain customers for life. By leveraging powerful vehicle, consumer, and credit insights, Experian enables you to identify who is actively in the market before your competitors do. You'll know who is coming off lease, who is in positive equity, who is likely to purchase in the next 30, 60, or 90 days, and who is due for service. Activate our highly targeted automotive audiences, reaching in-market buyers, near-market shoppers, service customers, and loyalty segments with precision. The best part? Our measurement solutions connect your marketing efforts directly to verified vehicle sales, allowing you to measure real ROI, not just impressions and clicks. Better marketing starts here. Visit ExperianAutomotive.com for more information.
Welcome back to Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker. Across the country, dealers are struggling to recruit and retain service technicians amidst a shortage. That means apprenticeship and recruitment programs are more critical than ever. Automotive News senior retail editor Dan Shine sat down with Jay Goninen, co-founder and president at WrenchWay, a job search platform for service technicians and more. They talked about WrenchWay's 2026 Voice of the Technician survey results and how technicians currently feel about their jobs.
Jay, great to have you back on the Fixed Ops Friday edition of Daily Drive.
Dan, it's always a pleasure talking to you. You always crack me up, so this is a pleasure.
That reminds me of the joke about the rabbi and the priest. No, I can't tell that one. So first, just remind folks what WrenchWay does and what it's all about.
Well, it's shifted a lot over the years. When we first launched the company, it was all recruiting. And over time, we just evolved to where we really got involved with the education side of the industry, right? So really trying to figure out this technician shortage in a way that actually tries to go about fixing it rather than kind of duct taping it together, which is what we were doing with recruiting essentially, right? Taking one person from one dealership, placing them in another. We actually don't do any recruiting anymore. So it's really shifted over the years to really a platform that helps schools out, right? And we just launched a program at the beginning of the year called ASE Connects in partnership with ASE. It's an ASE-led program that we're running for them. We bring elements of WrenchWay into that program, but it's more of an initiative to try and figure this thing out holistically and really try to figure it out in why are we having the troubles that we are. And so it's a 6-step approach that we've built out with ASE. And one of the very first things was just getting an understanding of how many schools are out there, right? So we found that there wasn't a lot of good data around how many schools were out there with automotive programs. And even going state by state, it was a little concerning that we just have no idea what the education system is putting out. So we've worked hard at that, going state by state, identifying every high school with an automotive program, as well as the tech schools that have automotive programs. And not only that, like what types of programs they have and a good contact at each, which surprisingly is more painful than you'd think. We've really put a lot of time and effort into that. That's something that we're going to do each and every year, is get an updated list, updated contact list, and kind of doing the same on the dealer side as well, to where we don't lose connection there. So all in all, we still have our school assist platform, ASE Connects, where you're able to just kind of get an idea of what the schools are looking for. And the whole intent is to get industry to focus on a program as much as they do the one person they're getting out of that program, right? And just knowing that a lot of, especially the high schools, are really struggling for budget. We have the ability to help these folks out. So if that teacher needs a case of brake cleaner, they shouldn't be paying for it out of their own pocket, which is happening a lot. Why can't we step up and do that? And it's really an effort to, will it hopefully produce more technicians in our industry at some point? I sure hope so, because the more we can focus on those programs and getting them to be powerhouse programs, I think we're going to find ourselves in better shape. And then the other side of that is a data component to that in understanding enrollment in schools, and then data on the industry side as well. We built out our technician wage tool because we had a meeting with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we're kind of disappointed in what their model was and how they come up with the data. And we actually had talked with a statistician from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and he was explaining his model, and it was honestly very concerning. And he had said something at the end where he's like, I didn't know anybody was actually using this data. I'm like, yeah, just our entire industry and all of our education system. So we've really gone to work on that side to where members of ASE Connects are helping us out with that data piece. And really that should help the shops themselves understand what the going rate for a technician is, and really get a good idea of what those technicians are wanting.
Nice. What brings us together today is you've recently released your Voice of a Technician survey, which I think you do every other year, every third year.
Every year. We've actually done it the last 3 years. So it's our third year of doing it.
All right. And high school kids, college kids.
This is all technicians.
All
technicians. Yes.
Okay.
And what's funny, when we first launched this report 3 years ago, I was a little scared when we did it because I thought it was going to be all entry-level technicians. But what we found when we actually did it was that the average technician that responded to it had 21 years of experience. 75% of them were ASE certified. About half of those technicians were dealership technicians. And so there was a lot of more experienced technicians. And in one way, that's really cool because you're getting good feedback. But in another way, you're a little scared because that shows you how empty our cupboard is kind of at that entry level stage.
So tell me some of your key takeaways from what you saw on this survey. I know you talked about what techs are looking for. They talked about pay structure, and they kind of gave their feedback. What are some of the things that kind of jumped out to you?
Well, it's easy to start with the negative, and I'll start with the negative, even though I don't like to. We do a net promoter score. All dealerships are familiar with net promoter scores. The sad part is it's gone down yet again this year, right? So we continue to see that drop, and not drop just a little bit. Each year it's dropped a little bit more, kind of voicing that dissatisfaction from the technician crowd with what they're seeing. And that part to me really stinks because you've got so many great organizations treating their people really well that I think a lot of times that negative narrative comes out of that. But I also think it's maybe a signal for a lot of dealerships to take this a little bit more seriously, right? The dealerships are really, really focused on fixed ops. It feels like as much now as ever. And so if this is such an important and vital piece to your business, why not take a survey like this and just check it out, right? Look at it, see if it generates any ideas within your head, and try to get some level of understanding of where that dissatisfaction is coming from. And really for me, I'm really trying to decipher, is it that they don't like the job itself? Like you hear a lot of complaints online about, how the physical toll it can take, or is it that they don't like the employer that they're working for? We actually dissect that in the report. I do think there's concerns there. I think one that really stuck out to me was that on the dealership side, there were only 36% of technicians that would recommend their dealership to a friend. And to me, that's really, really concerning, because if you've got over 2/3 that wouldn't recommend their shop to a friend, that's not great, right? Like we need to work on that.
Yeah. A lot of questions about pay structure.
Yeah.
And kind of what technicians kind of favored as opposed to one way flat rate as opposed to other ways?
Yeah. Pay structure, we ranked the industry's most urgent issues, and higher pay was by far number one. 84% of technicians said that's the top priority. Better pay.
That's my top priority too.
Yeah, it's all of our top priority, isn't it?
In case my boss was listening.
Better pay structure in general, which I think speaks to some of the discontentment with flat rate as a whole. And I think what we're starting to understand more and more is that it's not necessarily just that it's flat rate, right? I think when you look at what these technicians are looking for, I think it was nearly 40 something percent that preferred flat rate or flat rate with a guarantee. And I'm flipping through my pages here to find that exact number. But the thing is, there are people, and I've talked to technicians that have told me, if you take flat rate away from me, I'm leaving. Like I love flat rate. So there are that crowd that really, really enjoy it and like it, and it's fruitful for them. But then there are others that just absolutely hate it, and they tell all of their friends about it, and they really have concerns over that. And so I think what we're seeing and what I'm seeing from really strong dealerships is the ability to adapt based on the technician, right? So rather than maybe having one formalized pay plan for everybody, I've seen a lot of dealerships giving options, kind of menu options on the way that the technician would like to be paid. I think that's showing that you're listening, right? It might add more administratively to the dealership, but I do think it shows that you're listening and that you care. You also see, I think with the more experienced technicians, what they get frustrated with is if they're being paid flat rate, but then they're getting put on the most difficult jobs because they're the best in the shop, they're losing out because they're good at their job, right? And I think that is really damning to our industry, because if you're a young person, you're looking at that and you have that disgruntled person that has really worked their tail off. They've gotten to a point in their career where they are the best of the best, but now you've got maybe a lower skilled technician that's getting a lot of undercar work that's just killing it on flat rate. That's where I tend to agree with them that maybe the system's not as fair as we'd like it to be.
Yeah. So taking into account, different things, what technicians are looking for, the pay structure, the 40-hour work week, their top issues, and, whether they want to stay working in this industry. What kind of is your message to dealerships as, some of the to kind of take away after they hopefully go and read this survey? What do you think is a takeaway for them, or what they should, learn from it?
Well, if a dealership is anything like me, I still have to print stuff out, right? And maybe that's making me old, but I remember with this report specifically going through, and there's so much in there that going through it digitally was not doing me justice, right? So I had to print it off, and I just went through and started making notes, note after note after note. And I think I would encourage a lot of the listeners to do the same, where you actually look at the data, right? Don't just browse it, don't skim it, look at what they're looking for. And you talk about the work schedule. There's detailed responses on work schedules. And I think it's 52% have it as that they would not work weekends. So if you're a dealership and you're open Saturdays, even Sundays, and over half of the technicians won't work on the weekends, maybe that's something you need to adapt your strategy on, or come up with some type of hybrid schedule, which I know a lot of dealerships are already doing. So more than anything, I think it's to actually take a look at the report and not only just browse over it, but do some deep research into it and some thinking, and have open conversations with your team about it. We've had several dealerships that have printed it off or presented it to their own technicians and said, okay, what are we missing here? Is this accurate with what you guys think? If not, great. At least it started the conversation, right? And I think that's the big thing that a lot of technicians are looking for.
That's great. Jay, always great to chat with you and kind of catch up on what WrenchWay is up to and the Voice of the Technician survey. So really appreciate you jumping on. Have a great day.
You too, Dan. Thank you.
That's Daily Drive for today. I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer, as well as our own Riley Hodder, Richard Truitt, Molly Boygon, and Paige Hodder for their reporting for today's podcast. You can get the latest news on industry crises, used EVs, automakers' production goals, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back over the weekend for our weekend drive edition of the show. Our own Michael Martinez and Larry Velaquette talk about the week's biggest stories, including Sony Honda Mobility's decision to scrap its Afeela EVs, and Stellantis' move to start finding workers who park competitors' models at its North American headquarters.
In these workers' defense, there are some instances, hilariously, where security has ticketed older vehicles that used to be owned by Stellantis and no longer currently are, and they didn't realize that. So some of these workers do have legitimate gripes.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoyed the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.